And I'll move over to the third speaker. And as you may have noticed, it's been decided, I think, that there won't be a 30-minute break as was originally announced in the printed schedule, I believe. And we're going to move on to our third speaker of the day, Valérie Vouret. She is a research director at the CNRS in Nice, and I think works very closely with Paul Hoffman. And today's talk is titled "The ATP P2RX7 Axis Improves PD-1 Blockade Immunotherapy in Lung Cancer." Valérie, take it away.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can. I have to share my screen. What should I do? Sorry for that. Sorry. Sorry. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Écran partagé. OK. Partagé. Do you see my screen now?
Now we can see your entire screen.
My entire screen. That means, sorry. That one. Okay, that one will be good. Partager and okay. Which one do you see? Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank the scientific board for this nice meeting and all the attendees to be still here, especially the French one, despite the late hour. So today, as you said, I will speak about the ATP P2X7 axis, which improves PD-1 blockade immunotherapy in lung cancer. So it's not necessary for me to comment this slide. I think the only number that is important is that the over 5 years overall survival for lung cancer patients is still pretty low. And for sure, lung cancer faces an unmet medical need. And in this context, we focus our attention on the pre-energetic signaling landscape in a way to find a new therapeutic approach. So why the pre-energetic signaling landscape? You may know that inflammatory and tumor microenvironment are rich in extracellular ATP. And these extracellular ATP are the ligand of the P2Rx family receptors and the P2RY family receptors. Extracellular ATP is also dephosphorylated by ectonucleotides, like namely CD39 and CD73, which ultimately leads to adenosine, which is the ligand of the adenosine receptor, also named the P1 purine receptors. Whereas P2 purine receptors are immunoregulators, P1 purine receptors are immunosuppressors. And this highlights the crucial role of extracellular ATP as a key factor in the configuration of the tumor microenvironment. And in this context, we focused on the P2Rx7 receptor, which is a receptor channel. So this receptor is expressed on both immune and tumor cells. And this receptor is activated by high doses of extracellular ATP. That means that this receptor is activated when all the other receptors of the family are desensitized. So in response to, in the presence of extracellular ATP, there is a stimulation of the channel activity leading to the entry of calcium and the efflux of potassium. And this leads to induction of signaling pathway. Then the receptor by itself is also a macropore. It allows the passage of large molecules, and indeed we use the difluorescent TOPO3 to assay the activity of the receptor. These two events leads to cell death. And ultimately, activation of the receptor also triggers the activation of the NLRP3 inflammasome, which ultimately leads to the production of mature interleukin-1 beta and interleukin-18. And all these activity account for the anti-tumor properties of P2Rx7. You should also keep in mind that a truncated receptor is also expressed on cells, and this truncated receptor lack the C-terminal domain, the intracellular domain, and this truncated receptor just retain the tunnel activity, leading to signaling pathway which are linked to cell proliferation. And these truncated receptors has been shown to have some pro-tumor properties, and it is likely the translation of a splice variant, which is named P2Rx7B. So first things we did was to evaluate the level of expression of P2Rx7 in lung cancer. And for that, we use Cancer Genome Atlas database, and we are looking for a lung adenocarcinoma. And what you can see here, it's the receptor is expressed in non-tumor tissue, and its expression is decreased in tumor tissue. And this is true independently of the stage of the cancer. To go further, we analyze the expression of the protein. And to do that, we used our homemade cohort here in Hôpital Pasteur in Nice. And we isolated human cells, which are CD45 positive, to stromal and epithelial cells, which are CD45 negative. And what you can see here is that the receptor is expressed and is mostly expressed in human cells of the tumor. And finally, we also check for the activity of the receptor. And to do so, we selected human cells from adjacent non-tumor tissue or tumor tissue, and we stimulated and we add the topo-3 dye to these cells, and we stimulated with ATP. And as you can see here, the receptor is active in non-tumor and tumor tissue, but the receptor is less active in the tumor tissue than in the non-tumor tissue. Indeed, if you are looking here at 15 minutes, you still have some positive topo-3 positive cells in the non-tumor tissue, whereas in the tumor tissue, the dye is not entering the cells. So the next question was to understand why there is a lack of activity in immune cells of tumor tissue. And what we tested was the hypothesis that this lack of activity could be the result of the expression of this truncated version of the receptor. And to do so, we we purified immune cells from our homemade LUAD patients, and we check for the expression levels of P2Rx7B. And what you can see here is that there is an upregulation of this splice variant in the tumor immune cells versus the non-tumor immune cells. So the next question was to address whether this expression of P2Rx7B, the truncated version of the receptor, may impact the function of the receptor. And to do so, we used the HEK expression cell system, and we transferred the cells with either P2Rx7 full length in red or with both the full length and the truncated proteins. We selected stable clones, and all clones express the same levels of protein, and we then assay for the activity of the receptor. And what you can see here is that in cells that express both P2Rx7 full length and the truncated version here, you can see that the overall activity of the receptor is decreased. And then the next question was to address whether this impact on P2Rx7 activity may modulate or could modulate the composition of the immune cells and the recruitment of immune cells. And to do so, we go back on our OMAM cohort, and we were able to separate two populations, a population with a high levels of P2Rx7 expression, and the population with a high level of P2Rx7B expression. And as you can see here, depending of the levels of P2X7A, you have or you have not immune cells within the tumors. And here is the quantification. So with a high P2X7A, there is a high number of leukocytes, a high number of TCD8 cells, and a low number of myeloid cells. So keeping in mind that high expression levels of P2X7A correlates with high immune infiltrate, and with the fact that P2X7 has anti-tumor property, we wonder whether it could be possible to boost this anti-tumor property by activating or by overactivating the receptor. So to do so, we look for a positive modulator of P2X7, and indeed we collaborated with chemists in Lille who were working on the P2X7 program, and we asked them if they do not have in their library a positive modulator rather than the more classical inhibitors. Indeed, they had some molecules, we tested them, and HEI 3090 was the best candidate. And in the rest of my presentation, I will speak about the molecule. So first of all, we characterize the effect of the molecule on P2X7 activity. So, and for that, we use X cells expressing P2X7. And of course, in response to ATP, you have an increased calcium concentration and an increased macropore activity. But what is interesting here is that when you combine ATP and the molecule, you increase the increase of calcium concentration and the macropore activity. And this is also true when we did the experiment on a more physiological cell line, just like mice splenocytes. And when we use splenocytes from wild-type mice, you can see that the molecule is able to do more than what ATP alone did. And this is true for calcium concentration and macropore activity. And importantly, this effect requires the expression of P2X7 since when we did the experiment in splenocytes isolated from cow mice, there is no effect of the molecule. So we are convinced now that our molecule is indeed a positive modulator of P2X7, and we decided to test it in the Lewis lung carcinoma model, that the cells were injected in immunocompetent mice. And as you can see, in a prophylactic treatment, the molecule inhibits tumor growth. And at the end of the experiment, when we weighted the tumors, you can see that there is a fourfold decrease. Very interestingly, this effect is also true when we administrate a more therapeutic treatment. Indeed, here the mice receive the treatment when the tumor size reaches 15 millimeters square. And you can see that the molecule is still active and that we increase by twofold the overall survival of the mice. So this molecule is able to inhibit lung tumors. And then we decided to combine the effect of the molecule with an immune checkpoint inhibitor, and we use the anti-PD-1 antibody. So what is shown here is that the mice that receive only the anti-PD-1 antibody, most of the mice develop tumors. By contrast, the mice that receive the combo treatment, the molecule and the anti-PD-1, you can see that most of the mice, indeed 80% of the mice, demonstrate a tumor regression. And indeed, the mice were cured since we can keep the mice for more than 1 year. So that's very nice. And then we decided to test this combo treatment in a more physiological lung tumor model, and we used the KRAS-driven model. And as depicted here, the combo treatment is also able to not diminish the number of the lesion, but really spectacularly diminish the size of the lesion. So we are really confident that our molecule acts in synergy with the immune checkpoint inhibitor. And now we decided to check how the molecule works. So the first things was to elucidate whether it acts on the tumor cells or on the human cells. And to do that, we just transplant the tumors in cow mice. And you can see that in this condition, when the mice do not express P2X7, the molecule is not able to inhibit tumor growth, indicating that the molecule targets host cells and not the tumor cells. And so to go further, we then make an adaptive transfer and we add a wild-type splenocyte. And you can see that adding human cells to these cow mice restore the ability of the molecule to inhibit tumor growth. And we finally demonstrate that the human cells subset that is implicated is dendritic cells, since when we just administrate dendritic cells, we restore the ability of the molecule to inhibit tumor growth. So we have found that dendritic cells mediate the anti-tumor function of our molecule. The next question was, what was the molecular effector? And I remind you that activation of P2X7 leads to the production of two important cytokines, interleukin-1 beta and interleukin-18. So we use a neutralizing antibody to define which of these cytokines could be involved. And as you can see here, when we neutralize interleukin-1, the molecule is still able to inhibit tumor growth, so it's not interleukin-1. By contrast, when we neutralize interleukin-18, the molecule is unable to block tumor growth, so IL-18 seems to be the molecular effector. This was confirmed when we used IL-18 mice, where transplantation of Lewis lung carcinoma cells induced tumors, and the molecule has no effect on this tumor size. And ultimately, we were able to measure IL-18 within the serum of the mice that receive the molecule. And you can see that IL-18 concentration is increased in response when mice receive the molecule. So to make a long story short, we show we have a positive modulator of P2X7, which is able to activate or to boost the activation of P2X7 in the presence of extracellular ATP. This is the receptor expressed by dendritic cells, which then allow the production of IL-18 in an NLRP3-dependent manner. And then IL-18 will activate TCD4 on NK cells to produce interferon gamma. Interferon gamma will increase the immunogenicity of the tumor. And then if we combine the molecule and the anti-PD-1, we can cure 80% of the mice. And we were able to demonstrate the existence of a protective TCD8-dependent memory response. So I hope I convince you that the purinergic signaling is a therapeutically targetable circuitry. Indeed, I show you that the positive modulator of P2X7 in combination with immunotherapy is able to set up an efficient anti-tumor immune response. This also is true if you look upstream of the receptor using either adenosine receptor blocker or anti-CD39 or CD73 blocking antibody, or even by boosting ATP secretion. So all this effect would increase extracellular ATP and therefore increase the extracellular ATP P2X7 axis. And all these strategies have been shown in combination with chemotherapy or immune checkpoint inhibitor to set up efficient anti-tumor immune response. So what can be done and what we have to test in now? Certainly, we have to test new combination of existing strategy. I show you the PAM of P2X7 and immunotherapy, but we should try the other for instance, anti-CD39 or anti-73 blocking antibodies or whatever the combo strategy, but there is a lot to do and a lot to test. We can also think to obtain some activator of NLRP3. Indeed, it was shown in the literature that in dendritic cells, hyperactivation of the NLRP3 inflammasome also is able to set up an efficient anti-tumor immune response. And ultimately, our studies demonstrate that or suggest that there is a new biomarker that we can study. For instance, we thought that plasmatic IL-18 levels could be viewed as a predictive biomarker for immunotherapy efficacy. But also we think that measuring the levels of the P2X7B could be a theranostic marker for tumor development. So now it's time to thank all the people who did the work, and more especially in the team P2X7, Serena Janot and Jonathan Benzaken, who are two brilliant PhD students. The story on the tumor xenograft was initiated by the former postdoc Laetitia Douguet. I will, of course, thank all the members of Team 4, headed by Paul Hoffman, my collaborators, the platform of the Institute, and all the funders. So thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer the question.
Thank you very much, Valérie, for a wonderful talk. Again, I would like to invite the participants to put their questions forward in the Q&A so I can read them to Valérie. While we're waiting for questions, Valérie, I wanted to ask you about what's known about the mechanism of this small molecule. Is this stabilizing the open configuration of the channel? Or how does it actually work? What's the effect on the transmembrane protein of this small molecule?
To be honest, we still don't know how it works. It was done at the beginning using a pharmacophore of P2X7. And this pharmacophore was obtained looking at the best inhibitor. So I guess that the molecule will bind to the allosteric site within the receptor, but for the moment, we have no direct proof or direct evidence for this. And this is really a thing that we need to understand.
Thank you. Thank you. What about the bioavailability of this drug? Is this orally, or we have to inject it?
No, at the moment we administrated it by in the periton of the intraperitoneus.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? If not, I have one more, and that's related to your theranostic biomarker. Could you say a little more about how you envision measuring 7B?
So we have, for the what we did, it's to use a qPCR, and we have some probes that amplify specifically this mRNA. So I agree that at that time we have no tools that recognize the protein, so it will not be so easy. That means that we should find a way to amplify the mRNA. That's the only way that that will be specific for the moment.
I see. So you cannot detect the protein easily.
No, no.
What about a circulating assay to try to do this as a blood test?
Well, yes, we can. I have no idea of how many mRNA we will find, but it could be a good point to test here.
Valérie, thank you. Thanks so much. I think a wonderful talk. I will now move on to speaker number 4.